Alright, hey, what out there in Mandolin Land? Mike Hedding here. Today I'm coming to you with another Mando lesson. This time we're going to be talking about simple arpeggios. So what is an arpeggio? Just a fancy way basically of saying the notes that make up a chord. So if we know a basic chord, for example like a G major chord, we have three notes that are actually the building blocks of that chord. So why would I want to know that? One, I have really safe notes I can play over a G major chord. The other thing that's really helpful about knowing the arpeggios is now I have a place to start looking for a melody. So if we're playing a song in the key of G, the melody is most times going to start on one of those arpeggio notes. So if I'm really confident in knowing the arpeggio, I have a really good starting spot to look for the melody. So really important stuff here. We're going to go over a bunch of the basic arpeggios in open position. We're going to do some major ones. We're going to do some minor ones. And then I'm going to show you a movable one, a closed position, so no open strings arpeggios that you can move all over the neck and play 3-octave arpeggios. So a bunch of music theory stuff. We're going to get into it really slowly. This is a big concept, and I'm going to break it all down as best I can. All right, here's simple arpeggios. All right, let's start breaking down this simple arpeggios lesson. So first, let's talk about what is an arpeggio. So an arpeggio is just a fancy way of saying the notes that make up a chord. So if we have our 2-finger G chord, a G major chord, we have actually 3 notes that make up that chord that are found within the G major scale. So the notes are the 1, 3, and 5 notes of the G major scale are what is referred to as the arpeggio. So those are the notes that actually make up the chord. So in the case of G major, we have 3 notes that make up a G major chord are G, B, and D. G, B, and D. The 1, 3, and 5 of the G major scale. Those are my notes of a G major scale. The 1, 3, and 5. So if you look at your 2-finger G chord, you'll realize, whether you knew it or not, that those 3 notes are how we actually form that chord. We have a G on the bottom, we have a D, and then we have a B. So those are our 3 notes. Then we have another G. So G, B, and D are the notes that make up the G major chord. They're also within the G major scale. So we're going to be talking a little bit of music theory here. So it's important to not get confused with when we're referring to the notes of a scale or the notes of a chord. So the notes of the chord are within the notes of a scale. So it can get a little confusing sometimes. So take this slow and remember that the arpeggio, the G arpeggio, are just the notes, the building blocks of a G major chord. So let's start breaking down the G major arpeggio just in its simplest open form. And we're going to kind of use a classic mandolin rule where we're going to take one finger of our left hand is going to cover 2 frets. So our first finger is going to cover frets 1 and 2. Our second finger is going to cover frets 3 and 4. Our third finger is going to cover frets 5 and 6. And our pinky is going to cover fret 7. And anything above that, we're going to kind of shift. So that's a really good beginner mandolin rule, is one left hand finger covers 2 frets. And remember, I've got the pick direction and the left hand fingerings below the tab. So the staple symbols are down picks, the V's are ups, and the little numbers in the circles correspond to your left hand fingerings. The 1 is your index finger, 2 is middle finger, 3 is ring finger, and 4 is pinky. So if you're ever in doubt, you can refer to the left hand fingerings if you need to. Okay, so we're just going to start with our open G string. That's our first note. Then we're going to put our second finger on the 4th fret of the G string. That's our second note. And then open D. And then up to the 5th fret on the D string. That's our G. So we've got G, B, D. Those are our 3 notes. G, B, D, and then back to G. Then we're going to go up to the 2nd fret on the A string, which is a B. Then we've got 5th fret on the A string. That's a D, and then 3rd fret on the high E, that's our high G. And then we can go back down. So that's our G major arpeggio in open position. So again, let's do it again. just doing them with all downstrokes to start. And what I want you to focus on is keeping your left hand fingers down as long as possible. So I'm going to keep this 4th fret down as long as I can. Keep that one down as long as you can. What that's going to help you practice is getting the correct angle with your left hand, so you're not, leaning back too far this way or out too much this way. You need to be able to get all those notes to ring out cleanly. So even if I'm on all different strings, see how all those can ring out? So that's what I want you to practice. And start with all downstrokes. And then once you get that, you can start adding down and up. So I might do a bunch on each note. Stay on them all just downstrokes. You could stay on each note for as long as you want while you're practicing it. The other thing you could do eventually is mix up the notes in a different order. Very rarely in music do we just go straight up and down the arpeggio. So one thing you could practice is jump around the notes. I'm just mixing them up in a random order just to practice. Because that's more how you're actually going to practice it in a real song. You'll be mixing those notes up. You're not always going to be going just straight up and down. But start with going straight up and down. That's a great way to train your ear to hear how the next note in the arpeggio is supposed to sound. So let's add some strumming. So let's do that arpeggio. And then let's go back to our G and strum. Down up picking. You're just trying to get familiar with how those notes sound relative to your chord. Remember, those are the notes that make up the chord. So you could practice going up and down and mix them up in a different order. The more ways you can mix these notes up, the better.